It was a quiet Sunday afternoon in the heart of Benin City. The sun was high, and the dry breeze carried dust and the smell of burning firewood from nearby compounds. The streets were mostly empty, except for the occasional sound of a crying baby or the bleating of goats in the distance. Inside a two-bedroom house made of red mud walls and an old zinc roof, a storm was raging. The door flung open. A young woman in her early 20s stormed out of the bedroom, dragging a faded pink bag with a broken handle. Her face was tight with anger, her eyes red from crying, and her heart boiling with years of frustration. "I'm done! I've had enough!" she shouted, brushing past a crying little girl in the small living room. The girl, no more than 5 years old, had tears running down her cheeks. Her hair was braided in tiny plaits with red beads at the end. She wore a short blue gown that was slightly stained with palm oil from the food she had eaten earlier. "Mummy, please don't go!" she cried, running after the woman. "Don't leave me!" The woman stopped at the door and turned sharply. Her name was Osas. She had once been the most beautiful girl in her secondary school, smart, proud, and full of dreams. But all of that had changed when she got pregnant at 17. The boy who had promised her the world vanished as soon as he heard the news. Since then, her life had become a struggle. Osas looked at the little girl clutching her wrapper. "Leave me alone!" she shouted. The child, Ivy, held on tighter, her tiny fingers digging into the fabric. "You have destroyed my life!" Osas screamed. "Because of you, I couldn't go to university. Because of you, my mother threw me out. You are the reason my life is wasted." Ivy's sobs grew louder. "But I love you, Mummy." Osas pushed her away roughly. The little girl fell to the ground and hit her elbow. Without another word, Osas stormed out of the house and slammed the wooden door behind her. Welcome to Afro Tales TV, your home for rich, exciting, and inspiring stories from around the world. Today's story will touch your heart and keep you hooked till the very end. If you're new here, please hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of our amazing stories. Inside the house, the child lay on the floor, weeping. Her sobs echoed through the quiet house. Minutes passed. Then the door to the second room creaked open. An old woman stepped out slowly, leaning on her wooden walking stick. Her wrapper was tied high on her chest, and her gray hair was hidden under a net scarf. She was Mama Janet, Osas's grandmother and Ivy's great-grandmother. She walked slowly to the crying child, knelt beside her, and pulled her close. "Shh! Ivy, it's okay. I'm here," she whispered, rubbing her back gently. "She said I destroyed her life." The little girl sobbed. "No, my child. You did not destroy anything. You are not a mistake. You are a blessing, and as long as I am alive, I will take care of you." Ivy sniffed and held on tightly. Days turned to months. Months became years. Mama Janet raised Ivy with love and discipline. Even though they were poor, she made sure the girl never missed school. She sold akara in the mornings and roasted corn in the evenings to pay Ivy's fees. At school, Ivy stood out. She was brilliant. She always came top in class. Her teachers praised her. Neighbors called her the small professor. Mama Janet would sit on a stool every evening as Ivy read her books aloud, correcting herself and explaining topics like a true teacher. Despite her pain, Ivy never asked about her mother again. She learned to live without her. By the time she reached SS3, something amazing happened. A scholarship organization came to her school to test students across the state. The winners would get full funding to study in Europe. Ivy applied. Weeks later, she was called for an interview in Lagos. Mama Janet borrowed money from neighbors and sent her off with Faith. 2 months after, a letter arrived. Ivy had been chosen. She was going to Germany to study biomedical science at a prestigious university. That evening, Mama Janet called all the neighbors. They danced in front of the compound. They pounded yam and made a goosey soup. Even the women from the next street came to celebrate. "I told you," Mama Janet shouted with joy. "This girl will make us proud." And she did. Ivy spent the next 7 years in Europe. She worked hard. She studied even harder. She didn't forget where she came from. She called Mama Janet every week, sending money and voice notes full of laughter and encouragement. By the time she returned to Benin City at the age of 26, she had already co-founded a startup focused on health diagnostics. Investors welcomed her. The government recognized her. She was invited to speak at conferences. Schools used her story as motivation. But Ivy didn't stop there. She bought land and built a beautiful house for Mama Janet in GRA, Benin City, a white bungalow with blue window frames and solar panels. She registered her company, MedClear Solutions, and hired over 50 young Nigerians. The office sat on a wide compound with flags flying proudly outside. And one evening, as the sun set slowly behind the clouds, Ivy and Mama Janet sat on the porch of their new home, sipping Zobo. "I told you were not a mistake," Mama Janet said, smiling with pride. "You were right, Grandma. You always are." The compound was peaceful. Birds chirped in the mango tree nearby. A new chapter had begun. But destiny was not yet done. Far away, in a dusty street in Okun village, a tired woman sat on a broken wooden bench outside a small shop. Her name was Osas. She looked older than her age, with wrinkles around her eyes and dry lips. Life had been harsh. The man she ran off with had abandoned her. Her beauty had faded. Her job at a restaurant ended when the shop closed. Her rent was unpaid, and her dreams, long gone. One day, she overheard 2 women talking at the market. "Have you heard about that young lady, Ivy? The one who built that health company? They said she's the one who built that big house for that old woman in GRA." Osas paused. "What did you say?" "Ivy," the woman repeated. "The girl who went abroad on scholarship. That small girl her mother left years ago. They said the mother hasn't come back till today." Osas stood still. Her breath caught in her chest. She walked home in silence, her mind spinning. That night she didn't sleep. Could it be? Her little girl? Her Ivy? The child she abandoned? Now a CEO? Tears fell freely. For the first time in years, Osas felt shame not just for what life had done to her, but for what she had done to her own blood. The next morning, she took a bus to GRA. She was going to find her daughter, even if it meant begging for forgiveness. But she had no idea what kind of woman Ivy had become, and she didn't know that some doors, once shut, are not easily opened. The streets of Gray, Benin City, were calm that morning. The air was fresh with the smell of dew, and the sound of birds whistling in the trees floated gently around the newly built houses. Security guards swept the compounds, maids watered flowers, and cars moved quietly along the tarred roads. In one corner of the estate stood a beautiful white bungalow with wide glass windows and a smooth black gate. The signboard outside read, "MedClear Solutions HQ. Health starts with knowledge." Inside the building, workers moved around in branded blue shirts, holding tablets and files. It was a busy but peaceful environment. In the main office upstairs, Ivy sat behind her desk, reviewing proposals for a new health outreach project. She wore a simple peach blouse, gold earrings, and her natural hair was packed neatly behind her head. A knock came on the door. "Come in," she said. The door opened, and her secretary, a tall woman named Miriam, stepped in. "Madam, sorry to disturb. Someone is outside. She says she's your mother." Ivy froze. She blinked once, slowly. "Who?" Your mother. She says her name is Osas." She said it quietly, but she begged to see you. Ivy leaned back in her chair. A deep silence settled in the room. After a long pause, she nodded. "Bring her in." Miriam hesitated, then stepped out. Moments later, the door opened again. And there she was. Osas. She looked older than her 44 years. Her once smooth skin was rough and sunburnt, her eyes tired, her clothes faded. She held her scarf tightly as if it was the only thing holding her together. She stepped in quietly, not lifting her eyes. Ivy sat still, her face calm and unreadable. Osas stood in the middle of the office, holding her bag with both hands. "Good afternoon," she began, voice barely above a whisper. Silence. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she continued, "but I just wanted to see you, to know that you're alive, and well." Ivy folded her arms across her chest. "So, you found me." Osas nodded slowly. "I heard about you in the market. At first, I didn't believe it, but when they mentioned your name and your grandmother, I knew it had to be you." Another long silence. Ivy stood up and walked to the window. "You came," she said softly. "After all these years." Osas swallowed hard. "I've lived in shame for so long. I thought I had time. I thought one day I would be bold enough to face you." "You had 5 years to love me," Ivy said without turning around. "And you walked away." Osas dropped her bag on the floor and fell to her knees. Tears spilled from her eyes. "I was stupid. I was angry. I didn't know how to be a mother. I blamed you for things that were never your fault. And I've suffered every day since then." She wiped her face. "I'm not here to beg for money. I just want your forgiveness. I want you to know I regret everything." Ivy turned around. Her face was calm, but her eyes were glassy. She walked over slowly and stood above her mother. "I don't hate you," she said, "but I don't know you. I don't know how to open a door for someone who closed it on me when I was just a child." Osas bowed her head. "Please, give me another chance. Let me at least see my mother again." "She's not just your mother," Ivy said firmly. "She's the one who raised me, loved me, stayed with me when you left. She is my real mother." Osas cried harder. "I understand. I deserve that." Ivy stepped back. "I need time," she said quietly. "I'm not ready. Not yet. Go and find peace with yourself. When the time is right, maybe I'll be able to talk to you again." Osas nodded, still on her knees. Ivy walked to the door and opened it. "Please leave." Osas stood slowly, picked her bag, and walked out with shaking legs. She didn't say goodbye, and Ivy didn't look back. Later that evening, at home, Mama Janet sat in her rocking chair under the mango tree while Ivy watered the flowers. The sky above was soft orange, and the cool breeze carried the smell of fried plantain from a neighbor's kitchen. "I heard someone came to the office today," Mama Janet said gently. Ivy paused. "Yes, it was her." "And what did you say?" "I told her to go. I wasn't rude. I just wasn't ready." Mama Janet nodded. "Pain is like yam," she said. "If you eat it raw, it will scratch your throat. But if you wait for it to cook, it becomes food." Ivy smiled a little. "You have a good heart, Ivy," Mama Janet added. "Even when you're hurt, you still speak with respect. That's the kind of woman I prayed you would become." "I owe everything to you, Grandma." "No, my child. You owe it to God. He knew you before your mother even carried you." They sat in silence. The evening wind blew softly, rustling the mango leaves above their heads. Weeks passed. Osas returned to her village. She got a small cleaning job in a school and rented a room in an uncompleted building. She didn't complain. She began to attend church again, praying every day for a second chance, not just with her daughter, but with herself. She wrote letters to Ivy, never asking for money, only sharing how she was learning to live with peace. Ivy never replied, but she read them. One day, she visited her company's second branch in Wari. While leaving, she saw a little girl crossing the road alone. She stopped her car and walked the girl across, then gave her a fruit juice from her bag. As she drove off, she thought of her 5-year-old self, crying on the floor, begging her mother not to go. A tear rolled down her cheek. She wiped it quickly, but in her heart, she knew something had changed. 3 months later, she sat with Mama Janet again. "Grandma," she said, "what if I invited her to visit? Not to live here, just to sit, maybe talk?" Mama Janet smiled. "Then you will be doing what queens do. They listen when they are ready, not when they are forced." That evening, Ivy sent a short message to her mother's new address. "I'm willing to talk. Come next Sunday, by 3 p.m., not before, not after." On Sunday at 2:58 p.m., Osas stood outside the white bungalow. She wore a clean Ankara gown and simple slippers. Her hair was tied in a scarf, and she held a small handbag. At exactly 3 p.m. the gate opened. Miriam welcomed her in with a smile. "This way, please." She was taken to the backyard, where 2 chairs were set under a shade. Ivy came out a few minutes later, dressed in a simple gown, holding 2 bottles of water. They sat. No greetings, just quiet. Then, slowly, the conversation began. Not about the past, but about healing. And even though the wound had not fully closed, it had started to breathe. Moral lesson. Sometimes, the people meant to love us the most may hurt us deeply, but pain doesn't define who we become. Our choices do. Forgiveness is a journey, not a command. Heal at your pace, and when you're ready, let peace, not bitterness, guide your heart. Thank you for watching this story on Afro Tales TV. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, leave us a comment, and share with friends and family. We have more beautiful stories coming your way. So subscribe and stay tuned. See you in the next one.